I want to talk about two types of love. There is love in contrast to hate, and then there's love. Just love. Most of us, when we're thinking about love, we're thinking of it as opposed to hate. Because the usual thing is, shall we say, she loves me, she hates me. This is love, this is hate. You see? And this goes back basically, my mother is love, my mother is hate. What I call the basic split, bladder 4. That we tend to divide the whole world up into love or hate. So when we say mother is love, we usually say this mother, my mother as she is at this moment is love, but as she was before or as she will be again is hate. So we rejoice in the love, but we know from experience that there's also the hate that will come. And we feel loved or not, or hated, depending on whether we see her on one side of the basic split or the other. And as I've said before, adjectives activate antonyms. This basic split is so basic in us that if I say this is beautiful, it's nearly always implied, but this other is ugly. And even if we don't finish the sentence, there's always the implication that not everything is beautiful. You see? So when we say love, it's always in opposition, in apposition to something else, to someone else, being hate. And that's because as long as we stay afflicted by this basic split, we will only see love when it's opposed to hate. It's very hard, if not impossible, for us to just conceive love without the other side being implied or stated, as long as we have this very, very primitive, so early in our development, basic split, good mother, bad mother. You see? Now, so when we say, my mother is love, or God is love, or whatever we want, how is it usually meant? Is it meant that God is love, of which there is no hate? Or do we mean God is love in comparison to something else, which is hate? So, I think there are times of both. There are times when God is love, end of statement. Or there's God is love, dash, and, shall we say, the devil is hate. Or God is love and I am hate. Or God is love today, but God was hate yesterday when I didn't get what I want, or whatever it may be. So there are these two types, you see? Now, what are we going to call this love which has no opposite? See, the Vedantists talk about Brahman. They say it is the one without a second, that there's nothing else. And there is, I would like to believe, a love without an opposite. That there is just the state of love without any thought of it being an opposite. You see, if I look at that tree and I say, oh, that tree is beautiful, I know there's a part of me that's saying, the brick building opposite is ugly. It's very hard just to see it as beautiful. Can we see a sunset and say, this is beautiful, without in the back of our minds saying, and that bit of garbage over there is ugly, or something else, you see? So what are we going to call the love without an opposite? And maybe we shouldn't use the word love, because it may be so ingrained in us that there is an antonym, that we can't ever use it without invoking the antonym. So then getting away from this, I hope, this ideal state of there being love without an opposite. That's what I've meant by, I talk about the land of belovedness. Remember, I talked about this a long time ago in terms of music. When you suspend all judgment, which is this bladder 4 problem. It's not good, it's not bad. When you just say, listen to the music, or whatever it may be, the sunset, and you're able to do it without judging it, with what they call detachment, then you can enter the land of belovedness. And in that land of belovedness, I would like to think there's no longer judgment. It's no longer, you no longer think of it as love, because to think of it as love means that that we still think there's an opposite in some way. So it just is. It's this state which is. You see? And that's why I would say that the love without an opposite is the state of as is. Now I don't want to say the grateful acceptance, because that means there can be ingratitude in comparison, in contrast. If I say acceptance, then there can be non-acceptance. And if I say, but I can't say there's the not as is somehow, because there's nothing which is not, which doesn't exist, and there's nothing which is not, in a sense, I suppose, as it is. We can quibble about this, but I mean, it just is the as is. That's how it is. That's the as is, or if you want to call it existence. I think that's what they mean by Brahman. That you can't describe it, him, her, it. You can't describe it. You can't do anything except somehow to say it is. It is, and that's all there is. So it's one without a second, because that's all there is. There is nothing else. So you can't have a state, I don't think, of non-existence. So I think the word existence with a capital E is a good one. Or as is, capital A, capital I. Or if you like, if you can, suspend all judgment. Go past, transcend the bladder 4 problem. Go beyond the basic split and just, what's the word? Well, as I say, live in the land of love without an opposite. I think the yearning of our lives is for love without an opposite.